The second piece I would ask is that if you don't mind, if you would share your email either with me directly, I'll put my email in the chat here, or if you want to just put your email in the chat, it'll be part of the record. That will allow Robin and Michael to reach out to you directly without having to go through Keenan and I at the NVLF. We are going to get this. Robin has some slides. I don't know, Michael, if you will, not to be used tonight, but as follow-on information, I will send that out with the recording, as well as their contact information and mine again. But if you don't mind, like I said, if you throw it in the chat or send it to me directly, and I'll pop mine in there in just a minute. And with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to our co-host tonight, Keenan Delaney. Keenan is our Director of Corporate Engagement for the National Veterans Leadership Foundation. He's got some ties to a few of our Midwest schools that may be on the line here with Ohio State and Michigan. You wouldn't think those two, but they do, and there's a lot more than you think work at both. And I'm a Penn State and Ohio State one there too, so we've got a lot of mix on here. So, Keenan, over to you for tonight.
Thanks, Mike. Good evening and welcome to everybody on the call tonight. I think this will be a very informative and hopefully very engaging call. This is supposed to be a two-way format, these career sessions. So if you have questions, put them in the chat, raise your hand. Feel free to chime in at any time, but we're going to have a good amount of time at the end for Q&A to go back and forth with everyone. So don't feel if you don't get it asked early on, you'll get a chance to get it asked on the second half of the call tonight. We're very appreciative to have Robin and Mike with us tonight. I will not give you their backgrounds because I will let them give you their individual backgrounds. I will tell you, Mike is from Uber, and Robin represents a couple divisions at Amazon, and she will share all of that information with you. They're going to start out, each one of them take about 10, 15 minutes to tell you about, number one, their background, two, their role, and three, how their company recruits military-connected students. Once each of them has gone back, has talked about that, then we'll come back and ask each of them to just give you some general thoughts about how you as a military-connected student can really do the best job to represent yourself when trying to get in front of recruiters, trying to get in front of specific corporations, just give you some really general tips and information that they've sort of gathered over the course of their career. And then we'll leave the bulk of tonight's session for Q&A to allow you all to interact with them on a one-on-one basis. And again, please enter your email addresses in the chat as well, so we can put it on a list, provide it to them, and they can enter you all into their databases, and you'll become a part of their databases throughout your academic career. So with that said, I'm going to have Mike kick off things because he's so proudly wearing his Illinois sweatshirt tonight. And he will represent the Fighting Illini and Uber and get us started. Again, just tell everybody about your background, your military background, your role at Uber, and then how Uber recruits military-connected students. So, Mike, I turn it over to you.
Yep. Keenan, thank you so much for the introduction. Mike, Keenan, thank you so much for having me. A couple of quick things. Before we get into my background, there's three things I want to actually point out. In case you're wondering, how the hell do I relate to somebody at AWS or somebody over at Uber? First things first is I'm a veteran. I have transitioned, okay? And I went to school. So if you're thinking as you're taking notes or as you're going through this exercise that, gosh dang it, there isn't much that I have in common with the folks speaking. Yes, there are. Those three things that I just called out are probably three of the biggest takeaways that I want you to walk away with. So just remember that. I too am a veteran. I too have transitioned, and I went to school. And the reason why I share that is if I can do it, anyone can. Okay, that's the real reason why I'm bringing that up. So, thank you all so much for listening and taking the next 53 minutes for myself and Robin to kind of explain a little bit more about the climate and the environment, the hiring space within tech. As Keenan pointed out, my name is Michael Pett. I am Uber's head of military and veteran programs. I do that for Uber globally. I'll expand upon that in a little bit, but before we get into that, I am a retired disabled veteran in the United States Army. I spent 21 and a half years in, all on the enlisted side, not the commission side, not to poke at our O's that are out there on this call, but I was a senior non-commissioned officer. I spent 15 years on active duty. The rest of my time was in the National Guard. The reason why I left after 15 years is I ultimately figured that, if this is my time to jump into the corporate space, then I best do it. And that's exactly what I did. And I'm happy to expand a little bit more on what that journey looked like. I held a few MOSs while I was on the enlisted side. My first one was an 88 Mike, which for those that might be of different branches, I was transportation. So I was a truck driver, drove all of our vehicles. I was a human resources specialist. More specifically, I was a casualty operations liaison for our brigade QRF. So I worked as an S1 function, okay, for anybody that's familiar with your admin ops. And then my last billet I held was with an ROTC command. So I was a NCO instructor for all of our Chicagoland ROTCs. I really enjoyed my time. Everything I have in my entire life is due to my service time, to include my employment, right, where I ultimately landed. And I'm very grateful for that. As Keenan pointed out, and as my sweatshirt reads, I am a proud University of Illinois alum during the basketball season. Not so much during football for obvious reasons, as Mike and Keenan can kind of point out too. My journey after my 15th year mark really came because I did a cost benefit analysis. And those that may be less familiar with that is ultimately I looked at my 5 remaining years that I had towards a federal retirement. And I looked at joining the corporate workforce. And ultimately, I decided that I would make up more ground in the corporate landscape if I were to separate from active duty, long-term professional development, growth, all of those things that come with that, versus staying in for those 5 years and surrendering that time. And when I joined the corporate landscape, and we're going to get into the challenges that I faced, I knew I wanted to hitch my wagon to an employer that understood the armed forces community, or at least on the surface said they did, right? When I joined corporate America about 11 years ago, military hiring from the armed forces community was finally starting to get some teeth within the space. So I immediately leveraged my recruiting background and joined a large global corporate structure as a contractor. Okay, I wasn't even a full-time employee. I was a contractor. And I knew that if I, ultimately earned my keep and bid my time, eventually I'd be converted, and I did. After about 6 months of being converted, got my first promotion. 6 months after that, I took over the entire team. We did some amazing things at Accenture. And for those less familiar, whether it be some of the technology you use, or if you've been to Disney or taken a cruise, right? You've used something that Accenture has either built or helped improve. Now, after my time at Accenture was starting to wrap up, Uber came knocking on my door and asked me if I would help build out a global military hiring strategy, something that I'd never done while I was at Accenture. I did it for North America, but not globally. So now at Uber, I work with every Ministry of Defense, every Department of Defense, and every country that's a NATO ally of ours to help hire talent from the armed forces community. I build strategies with those countries. I help them with workforce accommodations, help with HR implementations to make sure that our folks have the ability to do what they do best. Okay. I really love my job. I have a great team. I don't do it all myself. I don't think anything we do is anything we do individually. I think we do it all as a team. So I've been able to take a lot of what I've learned in the military, a lot of what I've been able to learn from my senior NCOs and senior officers, and then being able to apply that. It's been a long, fun ride. These 11 years have flew by with the blink of an eye. And because of my time at these organizations, I now sit on the advisory boards for the Warrior Scholar Project, as well as the Pat Tillman Foundation. And most recently, I've been graciously invited to be a selection member. So now anybody who applies for a Tillman Scholar, I am on that selection committee as well. So really great opportunities that have come over the last 11 years. But I don't want to get too deep into my background. I want to kick it over to my colleague, Robin. Robin's got an excellent background that's going to ellipse mine. So let's get to the true person deserves the spotlight. Robin, I'll kick it over to you for your intro.
Thanks, Mike. The funny thing is, we didn't realize we have this much in common. I was also an 88 Mike, Fort Dix, New Jersey, a million years ago. I was Mad Dog of the Quarter. Don't know if we have that in common. But I was also, after that, as Human Resources. So we've just lived parallel lives.
We have.
Had no idea. Anyway, super cool. I'm going to see if I can share this because this is just funny. Okay, there we go. And then I'm going to stop. So I'm sharing this just to, I think it's hilarious, but I hit all of the different categories of military affiliations. I started as a dependent. My dad was a command sergeant major in the Army. I then became a military spouse. My husband looks about 12 in that picture, and you can see it was the 90s with the big poofy hair. It's mostly a walk down memory lane. I was enlisted. I was an 88 Mike. You can see that Cold Stone Killer there. And then I got a ROTC scholarship, so I went to the dark side, as Mike mentioned, became an officer, then was a chemical officer. I don't tell many people that, so now you are all in the fold. And then I became a human resources officer. Got off active duty, became a reserve officer, then I was mobilized, then I became a Department of the Army civilian. And then I'm so old that I also now have a son who enlisted in the Air Force and has completed his service. So I'm now a retiree. So I'll stop sharing. I just think that's kind of a funny little, walk down memory lane. So stop. There we go. So I say that just to give you a feel for, the sort of the lens that I come at when I'm talking about how to transition and how to navigate. And I've transitioned many times, as you can tell by, my experience. One thing that's unique, I think, about my experience is that before I came to Amazon Web Services, I actually was a Department of the Army civilian at Joint Base Lewis McChord, and I was in charge of the transition program. So that was from 2011 to 2016, when all of the rules and regulations were changing. We were updating what we did to support transition. The DoD Skill Bridge programs came into being, and I was at the forefront helping with all of that. And so I was able to bring both my own military experience and as a spouse and all of those things, plus my understanding of the rules and regulations as it relates to supporting transitioning military and their spouses, to my role, which my first role with AWS was on the military recruiting team back in 2016. And so what I realized pretty quickly is we had a lot of military programs, but they weren't working. I heard time and time again, we love military folks. They're amazing as it relates to our leadership principles. If we just had a way to train them in cloud computing, because back then in 2016, people leaving the military weren't getting a lot of experience in cloud computing. And so there was a technical gap. And so I joke and say on the 501st time I heard that, about 3 months in, I said, maybe we could create an apprenticeship program. So we could bring people with a military affiliation in, provide that instructor-led training, on-the-job training to fill that technical gap and make an amazing Amazonian. So I spent the first 3 years supporting that program in the United States, built out about 14 different programs, had about 1,700 apprentices go through it, and then hopped over and built a mechatronics and robotics program for worldwide operations. And then I just got tired. I'm not young, I have grandkids. So I went back to Joint Base Lewis McChord, got a little bit of a refresh on all the rules and regulations, but figured out very quickly I didn't fit there anymore. I just didn't. Amazon change issue. And so luckily made myself my way back. I'm what's called a boomerang. So I'm coming up on my I just celebrated my 6th anniversary with Amazon. So my role now is global military recruiting for AWS, Amazon Web Services, and Amazon Security. But I can share that we always want to show up as one Amazon community. So I can also help and support in worldwide operations as well. We have a lot of initiatives. I did send my slide deck to Keenan, which has a lot of our military specific programs. We've made a very deliberate effort starting back in 2016. Our then founder, Jeff Bezos, made a commitment to hire 25,000 military affiliated folks and their spouses. We blew that out of the water and re-upped it in 2021 to 100,000. And I'm told we just hit that. So we've got a lot of programs that support that. We've got student veteran programs. We've got transitioning programs for people who are leaving the military, but most of those programs, veterans and military spouses are eligible for, like the Hiring Our Heroes Fellowship, where we bring in a lot of people into corporate roles. We've got our apprenticeship program, of course, and then we've got teams of military recruiters that are just going out and participating in those either veteran service organization career fairs or transition events at the bases, or a myriad of external partners that we partner with to bring in military talent. So we've got a big focus on that. Like I said, I represent AWS and AMSEC, but I'm part of a much larger Amazon community globally whose sole focus is to hire military. And the reason we do that is because, Jeff Bezos saw that one of the things that's super crucial at Amazon, and if you haven't seen this and you want to come to Amazon, I'd recommend you write this down, although it is in the slide deck. We have 16 leadership principles, and everything we do in this company is surrounding those 16 leadership principles. And what Jeff Bezos realized, and when you look at them, you'll see they're very similar to the Army values, or all of the values that the Department of Defense holds true. And he realized that the military community aligned really closely with our values, and that it would, it's just good business to make a concerted effort to hire people who've served and their families. So definitely recommend you look into those. Again, as a person who dealt with hundreds and hundreds of companies as a transition manager, I can tell you some companies, it's just a poster, but at Amazon, it's almost nauseating how much it's ingrained in our life. Like, it's how you're interviewed, it's how you're selected, it's how you're promoted, it's how we make decisions. It's part of our everyday conversation, those leadership principles. So if they resonate with you, would love to chat with you about opportunities. If they don't, then, that's part of your research, right? Figure out what culture, what climate you want to be in, and maybe we're not the right fit. But I think you will see that they align very closely with military service. So happy to be here, have lots of tips and tricks I'd like to share, but that's who I am and why I'm here to chat with you today. So thanks for the invite.
All right, Michael or Robin, if you don't have anything else, we could start to open it up for questions. I would tell folks either just raise your hand or you can put a question in the chat, and I'll kind of follow that and see and ask that. And there already is one in there from Anne Marie. It said, how would you direct more middle or senior leaders approach the job search process? Is there any difference as to what level you are coming out of the military, say?
I'm happy to go. I read that question earlier. At the end of the day, I think it's imperative that we don't think of ourselves as what bucket do we fall into. As veterans, it's very easy for us to, okay, hey, you were an officer, so you're a project manager, you're going over here and you're going into that bucket, or you were a senior leader, you need to be over here, or you're operations, you're at the end of the day, at Uber specifically, as I speak to that, we look at each individually holistically, right? So, regardless of, we want to know what your education level is. We want to understand what your interests are. We want to know where you are, because at the end, I'm going to keep saying at the end of the day, that's one of my my tics. So I apologize for that. We really try to figure out what's going to make for the most happy union, right? Do you understand what we do at Uber? Do you think of us only as a rideshare company or a food delivery service? Or do you understand that we are, in fact, actually a tech company, right? And so when we look at somebody that says, like, hey, I'm a senior leader, well, you are a senior leader doing what, right? What is your passion? What is your interest? And then we start to peel the layers of the onion back from there. So I always encourage people to look at our careers page first and foremost, find out what roles are appetizing to you. And then what we'll do is we'll grab time. We'll sit there and we'll walk through your profile, your background, and see if it aligns with the competencies. Because at the end of the day, here we go again, at the end of the day, right, we are a publicly traded organization. We are not a TRADOC, okay? We're not going to send you down to the schoolhouse, get you trained up, and then redeploy you once you have the skill set we're looking for. Also, there's a lot of economic impact, such as what's going on geopolitically. We've got 2 wars going on. A lot of tech-based companies are moving their opportunities elsewhere. So what we'll try and do, and I'm confident Robin will do this as well, but I'll let her speak to it, is we want to educate you on what our hiring decisions are, why they are what they are, how we've come to them, and help you better understand how to go about your search. So to answer your question, we look at you as an individual. We want to understand what your background, what your interests are, and we try and determine if we have an opportunity for you. Because it always comes down to timing and availability, not just you were a senior 05, 06, within a BSB. That's not necessarily going to be helpful for us to figure out what the best fit for you would be. So it starts with a conversation, and then we make our decision from there. But Robin, over to you to see if you got anything you want to add.
Well, I would echo a lot of what Mike said, but I think the only thing I would add, and he kind of alluded to it, but when you start to engage with our recruiters or with me or anybody on the team, it's crucial that you've taken a step back and really figured out what drives you, where you bring the most value. Do that homework, as Mike mentioned, figure out where you fit, what you're passionate about, because I can't tell you how many times I'll be at a career fair or whatnot, and a person will walk up to me that's from the military and they'll say, "What jobs does Amazon have?" Terrible question. Please don't do that. It's almost it's a conversation killer at that point, because if you think about Amazon, there's almost no job that Amazon doesn't have, right? So for me to stop and try to explain that to you, it's not a good use of your time or mine. I want to know when you walk up that you've done your homework and you know what you want to do, where you're going to have the biggest impact. And then you say to me, "Hey, Robin, I've seen these roles. I'm really well qualified." I can have a much more meaningful conversation at that point, and I can point you in the right direction. I can get you connected to the right recruiter. But the other thing that they'll often say, and I know this for myself, they'll say, "I can do anything. Just give me a shot. I can do anything." And I know that's true. I absolutely know that's true, but not helpful to a recruiter, right? They want to know, only you know in your heart what drives you, where your passion lies. And it does, to Mike's point, if you were an 88 Mike like I was, I didn't want to be a truck driver. So, you're not your military specialty. You're not, whatever it was you did in the military, but take that time, speak with your family, figure out your priorities and say, this is where I can have the biggest impact, and then target that search and then reach out, and the recruiters will move heaven and earth to help you at that point. But if you just say, "Here's my resume, what can I do at Amazon?" It's going to be a conversation stopper. And to his point, I think the other thing I will say, and I'll say this with a grain of salt, I had a base commander who was an 06 who thought because he was an 06, he should immediately be a VP at Amazon.
Go, say it, Robin. Put it out there.
Just saying. What I had to explain to him was, you commanded thousands of people, and I respect that. And, obviously you were very professional and you have a lot of experience. However, how would you feel if an Amazon VP came to the military and said, "I want to command a brigade because look at what I did over here"? It just doesn't work that way, right? I mean, they're apples and oranges. Know your value for sure. Absolutely know your value. But different companies have different level of roles, and only by looking at the basic qualifications, preferred qualifications, your background, your drive, where you fit. And we will, again, we also know on the other side, we'll help you translate that. But so don't undervalue yourself, but also don't, feel like I need to step straight into a VP, level also. So find where you fit, work with us, and we will help you figure out where you fit. We actually have a military skill translator. It's on the slide deck that I sent, but it's called Opline. And if you put in what you did in the military, plus your education, plus your experience, it will tell you exactly what you're qualified for at Amazon. It's a great tool, constantly working to improve it, but it'll at least give you a starting off point to help you in your job search. And then from there, we can have a very meaningful conversation, and we can point you in the right direction and get you in front of the right people.
And if I can echo what Robin said with respect to Opline, we do not use it simply because we're working on it. But bottom line is, I know Alex from Opline. It's a great tool. I definitely encourage y'all to give it a look. See, it really is a great tool.
Takes a lot of the guesswork out for sure.
Hey, Robin, I'm going to ask you a question, just a general question. And then Mike, you follow up on that, have Robin go first. Everyone on the call is a college student. As a college student, as I go through my college career, I'm going to have different experiences. As corporate employers, what are the types of things as a military connected student that I can be doing on my campus, or I should look to explore to make myself look better or more attractive to a company I might be interested in? Because we know and we hear from military connected students and from employers that, that transition can be tough sometime. And so the networking, the getting out of your comfort zone and doing things that you normally wouldn't have done or aren't necessarily designed for you because you're not a traditional student. You may be older, you may be married, you may have kids. And a lot of the things that are on a college campus are designed for an 18-year-old. And I'm on the alumni board of the College of Business at Ohio State. And I know a lot of people in the college always used to hate hearing me tell college students, no one ever got hired for the number of clubs they belong to. But that can be important as well. That kind of socialization, those types of things can be important. Can you maybe talk to that a little bit about types of things students can do as a college student out of the classroom to help themselves look better to an employer?
I can take this one first. For us, for AWS, specifically Amazon Web Services, one of our leadership principles is called learn and be curious. And so so as you can imagine, if you're going to join a tech company this day and age, you have to love learning. You will become obsolete very quickly if you don't love learning, but that's not everybody's skill set, right? And so one thing that will really make you stand out for AWS is if you've gone after any of our AWS certifications, because you've done that on your own time, and there's links to all of the free resources to get those in the slide deck that you're going to get. You've taken time out of your own time. You've shown an interest and curiosity in AWS specifically, and you've taken that extra step to learn it and, make that effort to get the certification. But then it also gives you verbiage and things to put on your resume that show you're not just throwing your resume at the wall to see what will stick. You have invested the time and energy. You want to come to AWS. You understand our services, what we bring, and you want to be part of that team. So that's huge. Another thing I will say is go to those career fairs. I know they have them all the time. We do we partner and go to internship fairs at the colleges with the thing I mentioned before. I see you've got these roles. I see you've got these internships. These are my qualifications. Have a very meaningful conversation with them. I definitely recommend you get internships whenever possible. We have a very high conversion rate from our internships, so that's a great way to get a job at Amazon. But also, it is still about who you know, right? LinkedIn is a great tool. We have an affinity group called the Warriors. So if you go on LinkedIn and you just search for anybody who's got the tagline Warriors at Amazon, that's a person that's affiliated with the military. I don't know a single one that won't, grab a cup of coffee, talk to you about your journey, give you a piece of advice, sit down and, run you through some interview questions and just give you that peek behind the curtain. Because again, our culture is not for everybody. That's invaluable information to get that peek behind the curtain. What's a day in the life of like, especially if they're doing the role that you're looking for. Oh my gosh, that's just gold right there. So do everything you can to research the culture, to show that you're targeting and very interested specifically in that company. That'll make you stand out for sure. And then build your network and go to those career fairs to get those internships with a plan. I would say that's my top advice.
Yeah, I think for me, the first thing that pops to my mind is get your tails over to your career services center. Every campus, whether it be an online institution or a brick and mortar campus, is going to have one. The reason why I think you need to get your tails over there is because when a company posts their positions, they either use a third-party site. So basically they could use Handshake, they could use Mesa, right? But ultimately, your career center has an agreement with these companies that they will post individual job postings through that. So if you were to go to uber.com/careers, click on our University tab and see all of the opportunities that we have on there, everyone in the world can apply through that channel. But if you go to your career center, you will have a special link just for your school. The reason why I bring this up is, as amazing as your institutions are, companies might only see them for one small business segment. So take, for instance, Illinois, where I went to school. We hire tech talent from that school, not necessarily business talent from that school. So if I were a student studying computer science at the University of Illinois, I would have a greater chance of getting an internship if I applied through the Career Center versus applying online through a careers page for the company I'm interested in. There's clear separation there. So please, please, please go to your career center, okay? It's the best way to increase your likelihood. Secondly, if you find a recruiter on LinkedIn that works at a company that you're interested in, don't go celebrating just yet. You didn't necessarily strike gold, okay? At Amazon, at Uber, we have hundreds, if not thousands of recruiters that work for our organizations, okay? Some might work on different lines of business roles, different career levels, right? So bottom line is that might be a great connector, but it may not be the connection you're looking for. So what I would encourage you to do is reach out to the Robins of the world, the Michaels of the world, from those organizations to see what you can do to increase the visibility, increase the likelihood of your application being seen, okay? And last, but definitely not least, be agile, okay? You got up for PT formation. You got up for those inspections for first formation on Monday in the motor pool, okay? You did all of those other things. Now you're a student, and I understand and sensitive to the fact that you might be married with children and have a part-time position, but the full-time work is finding that meaningful employment after you graduate. There's going to be a lot of additional steps that you're going to have to take. So set those realistic expectations for yourself, your partner, and your family. Because if you think that just because you earn that sheet of paper, that it guarantees you employment, you are mistaken. Okay, there's a lot of steps that you have to follow. Okay, and if you don't follow in the appropriate format, you could be doing yourself a disservice. Okay, that's why I led off with I'm a veteran, I've transitioned, and I have gone to school. Okay, we know that there's certain pieces of this puzzle that have to be placed just so. So please, we implore you, reach out to us so we can make sure that you're following the appropriate steps. Okay.
Thank you for that, Michael. That's a really important thing that we see all the time is folks wait till they're graduating and then they're like, okay, I got my degree, hire me.
Yeah.
So pointing that out, that there are a lot of things to do while you're in school is really important, and the timing of it can be critical as well. It leads me to the next question. It's in the chat, and Robin answered part of it, but I want to modify it a little bit. The question was, how much of your interviews are in person versus online? And Robin answered that they are now completely online. I assume that was something that everybody did during COVID. But coming out of COVID, is it going to stay? Is it going to change? Because one of the things they hear from the Career Center is a strong push on in-person interview skills, when maybe they should be doing a little bit more of the online interviewing skills. It's certainly fine to have both, and there's things that are good for both, but could you talk to that, what they're hearing and what you're seeing in reality?
Yeah, Robin, you want to finish? And go for it?
Sure. I mean, I'm not seeing any indication that we're going to pivot back. Now, they are video interviews. So, you're still on camera, you're still, making eye contact, you're still engaging. If you get to what it's funny, we still call it an on-site interview, even though you're not on site. You're going to be interviewing with probably 5 or 6 Amazonians individually. Each one, about 3 or 4 of them will be from the team that you're interviewing with, and then another will be what's called a bar raiser, and they're outside of that organization, and they're designed to be sort of this objective, a person who has nothing invested in you being hired, but is there to stand for our company's culture and just evaluate you based on the cultural fit. And so they'll all individually interview you. It's all based on the leadership principles. I can't stress enough how important those leadership principles are. And we are very upfront. If you Google Amazon interviews, it is all about the STAR format, and all they really care about, honestly, at the end of the day, is that result. So come prepared with stories that show how you accentuate those leadership principles in the STAR format. Be prepared to meet with 5 or so different Amazonians individually. And they try really hard to make them conversational. I'm one of the bar raisers, and we're trained. You can't interview anybody at Amazon unless you've gone through training. So we want it to be very conversational, because we're not trying to stump the chump. We want to get to know you legitimately and see if you're a good fit for the role and for the team. So as hard as it is, I always try to tell people, please try to just approach it as you're having coffee with a friend, and you're just telling them some stories, and you'll be in good shape. But I don't, from a cost perspective, especially, I don't know that we're going to shift back to in-person, just because it's so much more convenient for the candidates and for the interviewers to have them virtual. So I can't see that pivoting, but stranger things have happened. So
Yeah, we're the exact same way. At the end of the day, it's cost savings, right? An exponential cost savings by doing this virtually. We too leverage Zoom or some sort of video format to do it. The thing that I want you all to kind of understand is Amazon is it's so big and so vast that Uber is actually newer than Amazon, 1. 2, we use a lot of the same language that Amazon does. We have bar raisers, we have all these things, and a lot of tech companies that have come post Amazon are leveraging the same language and following similar formats. So if you do have an interest in technology, there's going to be a very similar approach to this. But I want to kind of address one thing that Robin had mentioned, the STAR method, right? For those less familiar, stands for situation, task, action, result, right? Stuff that we've done in the military. I want you to have relevant examples, right? It's very easy for us to kind of rely back on the military, but take into consideration that there's a good likelihood that you're going to be meeting civilians, that some of your experiences may not necessarily land well if you're using those as pure examples. So try and really work hard on coming up with something that could cross over between potentially a veteran interviewing you, but also a civilian, right? Bringing it down to the lowest level with your explanations. Because for a lot of people, we understand that military experiences, maybe that might be all that you have outside of the institution or academic institution that you've gone to. So really pay attention and try and make a concerted effort to do a good job at storytelling when you're in the interview process, okay? And then a couple of tips and tricks. Follow up with a thank you, always, right? Our egos aren't that big that we don't like a thank you. So definitely follow up with a thank you. You'd be surprised at how far it goes, okay? And then ask for next steps, okay? Ask for next steps. That way you can set better expectations for yourself, your family, and maybe other employers that you might be interviewing. Okay.
We have another question in the chat that Robin answered from her perspective. It was a question of Francis looking for some remote roles in data science and has had trouble finding those, and wanted to know if your two companies have any remote roles. And Robin, I see your answer that most of your teams have come back to a 3-day a week in the office. And I know, at least anecdotally, the companies here in Central Ohio are moving heavily back to some presence back in the office, 2 to 3 days at least. Seems to be the norm and is growing as we go forward. But if you either of you would like to talk a little bit about that, what you're seeing in the industry too, not just at your companies.
I can say one caveat. If you are married to an active duty service member, there's a permanent return to office exemption for you. So if anybody out there is a spouse, they have a permanent exemption, but the vast majority of the rest of us are back in the office. I'm in the office right now, so 3 days a week. And it, it has to do with our culture. It has to do with, team building. It has to do with a lot of things. But yeah, the days of a lot of remote roles at AWS and Amazon are passing us by, I think. So
We're the same way, right? At the end of the day, we moved to, more full remote, obviously, during COVID, right? And it was solely for COVID. And, we understand that that's convenient for some. Some people live in very remote locations, but at the end of the day, we'll go find a data scientist that is Seattle based, or we'll go find one that is SF based or Chicago based. And that's just something that I would prepare myself for if I were you, that remote opportunity. Those are going to be fewer and further between. We pay an exorbitant amount of money in commercial real estate each and every year. And because of that, we need our employees to get back into the office. Additionally, we pay an exorbitant amount of money in additional resources, such as free food, all of the other technical assets that are available, the stand-up desks that some folks might need, right? We try and do our very best to ensure that the workforce and workplace accommodations that one might need exist in the office, which you may not be able to receive if you're working from home. So, I think as you think forward about, towards graduation dates, the likelihood of you being full remote is going to be less and less with each passing day.
I would like to say we have a desperate need for people in our data centers in Ohio. So I would love to talk to anybody. Now, that's not data scientist. However, they are technical roles in our data centers, and we cannot find humans. So I would love to talk to anybody who wants to stay in Ohio about those opportunities. So you might not have to leave Ohio.
Robin, while we're talking about that, you want to talk a little bit about the military set aside internships that Amazon Web Services currently are recruiting for?
Yeah. So we have 100 software development engineer military intern openings today that we are trying to fill. And I'm told we will close those by the end of April. So we're in the dead of the middle of high, intern season right now. So if you think, oh, I'm going to wait until May or June to get my internship, at least for us, you will have missed the boat, unfortunately. So yeah, we've got 100 recs set aside just for the military community for software development engineers. We also have cloud support associate engineers, cloud support associate internships for the military community as well. Not as many. The bulk is in that software development engineer field. So but then we have direct full-time roles in our data center in Ohio. just in case you missed that.
Can you elaborate a little bit on that? If someone is not studying, say, software engineering, but they have skill sets in those areas, would they be eligible for those types of positions?
You mean the data centers or?
The
Yeah.
internships and specifically.
The support associate internship doesn't have as much of an educational requirement. You just have to be enrolled in an associate's degree, I think, associates or 4-year degree, but you don't actually have to have the degree even to get the job at the end in a STEM field. So that one's a little bit more open. Software development is pretty computer science focused, right? So that goes without saying. But if you just search for cloud support associate or cloud support engineer, so if you think about that role, it's the first line of defense for our customers. So if a service goes down, that's the person that is going to be on the phone or chatting or on the computer trying to get them back up. And obviously that's very important to the customer, right? And so you become a subject matter expert in one of our services, and you are the first line of defense to keep everything running smoothly. So that's what that role is about.
Michael, do you want to add anything before we go? Jonathan Wilgus had a question.
Yeah. You know, as we talk about internships, you know, you're all being students. That's another thing that's super important about touching base with your career center, but also finding out how that company hires talent, right? You know, as you get closer and closer to your senior year, you know, are you waiting to drop applications right before graduation? Or did you uncover the fact that, hey, that big tech company, their full-time employment comes through internship conversions, okay? And those that may be less familiar, internship conversions mean that if I did an internship between my junior and senior year or my senior year, then I would receive a full-time offer to come back and be a full-time employee. That is how Uber primarily hires its talent. So if you're thinking about, well, hey, I got a wife, I got kids, I got a husband, I got this, I got whatever you have, I completely understand and am sensitive to that, but you have to do your research to find out how that company hires its talent. Otherwise, you might be late to the game, okay? You might have to wait a little while, find some experience or exposure at another organization, and then reapply at a later date, okay? So those are all things to take into consideration. Additionally, Uber is a substantially smaller company compared to Amazon. We only have 24,000 global employees, so we're naturally going to be hiring at a much smaller clip. So with respect to some of our offerings that we have, yes, we're a SkillBridge employer, but we also have this pretty kick-ass program that I rolled out last year called Boost. So basically what we did was we took 16 veterans and military spouses, or as we call them, partners, that didn't have a background in software engineering. They leveraged the MSSA certificate. They had a passion for getting into technology and wanted to get into software development. We brought them through an 8-month paid apprenticeship where we gave them anywhere from $44 to $50 an hour and turned them into software engineers. We taught them our stack. We taught them how we do things. And then once they were done with their apprenticeship, we converted them to software engineers. So, you know, they go from making, you know, $40 an hour to then making $150K a year with full benefits. So a pretty kick butt offering. You know, once again, we have the ability by working with the armed forces community to try new things. And this is something that we had a great success with, and we'll be rolling out later again in this year.
So Michael makes a great point. We also had a software development engineer apprenticeship, and like I mentioned, about 14 others. But I don't know if you heard in the news, but Amazon slowed their hiring pretty significantly last year. And as a result, we have pivoted this year to almost entirely intern conversions. That's where most of our talent this year is coming. I'm not saying it's going to last forever, but at the moment, that's where, and I did post in the chat the link to that specific military software development engineer internship if you're interested. I'm hoping the day will come back where we have apprenticeship, because we saw the value in bringing people in who've got great leadership and are maybe just missing this piece, and training them in software development engineer was one of those. But unfortunately, it's just not available right now because the focus is converting interns right now. So.
Thank you. Jonathan, you had a question?
Yeah, so I had a question about the data center jobs. What kind of person are you looking for that kind of job? Could you talk a little bit more about what it is? I've got a bachelor's in engineering. I'm currently working on a master's in business, but I don't even know if that's really the right direction. I love Excel spreadsheets, and anytime you can put a bunch of data in front of me and I can turn that into a decision at the end, I just have a great day.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different roles in the data centers, engineering operations, of course, managers, network engineers. If you think about it, so the environment in a data center is very different than a corporate role. So you're in the big data center and your team's entire job is to make sure that thing keeps running. It's critically important to AWS that those never go down. So there's lots of people working on, HVAC or electrical, all of that, but also managing the servers, leading teams, building the data centers and everything in between. If you happen to have a clearance, they would love you even more in Ohio. So, but that's the type of role. It's not customer facing. You're with a team in the data center, keeping that thing running. And so all the things that are involved in that would be involved there.
Thanks.
Robin, there was another question about the military internships. Is that something you see every season, once a year, just this year?
For this year, it's just the summer. At our height in 2022, we did rolling military internships. We had an exception to step outside the traditional summer model. But again, with the slight pullback in hiring, we've been asked to stick with the once a year, 12 weeks in the summer model. There will always be separate recs set aside for military, but they will follow the traditional summer schedule, unfortunately.
Robin and Michael, if you were to sort of face a student who was married with a child and some other stuff, and we're trying to land an internship position, both how's that handled, I guess, is one question. And even if it's not handled as well as you might hope it might be, what would you advise a student to do who, when you're sitting there saying that the 12-week internship is the pipeline for the job, how would you approach it?
Well, for me, I mean, I'm going to take the human approach, right? At the end of the day, I want to be sensitive to the fact that there's going to be certain social or familial challenges that, might conflict with that person's schedule. But at the end of the day, right, that is our how we hire, right? And I would do my absolute best to help set expectations so that that human being understands what's going to be truly required of them, right? Because, whether it's an aspirational goal to work for a big tech company or they're just shooting their shot, I still want to let them know what they're up against, right? And whether you're married, have children, a lot of our employees are married and have children, right? And it's just when we as an armed forces community generally look for civilian employment, we're a little bit later in the game, right? So it's really kind of walking back and helping them understand that we all raised our right hand. We volunteered to join the military. We didn't necessarily understand what the civilian limitations or challenges were that we were going to face on the back end, but nonetheless, here we are. So I always try and make sure that they are mindful of what they are getting themselves into, so that way they can prepare household six and those subordinates beneath them, right? Because like I said, it's a family unit. This is a big decision. It's one that's going to have tremendous amount of impact on their future. But on the flip side, if foregoing 12 weeks, becoming a geo bachelor, so that way you can have generational wealth changing opportunity, right? When we do that cost benefit analysis, I think that they're going to see the value in sacrificing for those 12 weeks, so that way they can land that long-term opportunity and create much more wealth for them in the long run, if that's something that they're interested in.
So you're still an advocate for the internship. Take it and do it.
100%, 100%.
Yeah. Okay.
And this is coming from a goofball that didn't do an internship. So
Okay.
Hey, we've got about 3 minutes left, but I think Nicholas had a very important question And I see, Robin, you started to answer it, but the question is basically, if you have a National Guard commitment requirement during the summer, how does that impact, should that impact you if you want to apply for an internship? Because could it ultimately make you ineligible that you have this National Guard commitment in the middle of this 12-week, you have this 2 to 3 week commitment in the middle of your 12-week internship?
I'd love to jump in on this one. So as a former guards person, okay, I also know how annual training, how your summer courses go, all of that stuff. You can defer, you can get a kickback, you can do home station annual trainings if you have an agreeable commander. There's workarounds there, but also we are ESGR compliant. If you are required to go to annual training, we'll absolutely do that. But what would be of tremendous benefit for you to see if there's any extension, continuation, or deferment you can do, so that way you can get through the internship cohort in one fell swoop, as opposed to looking for complications. But at the end of the day, listen, I'm an old crusty NCO. I know all of the stinking workarounds here, all right? So at the end of the day, there's always the opportunity to kick things to the right, because I know how that ARPhagen cycle used to work, and I know how it's working now, and it's moving much slower because we are not deploying to Iraq and Afghanistan every 5 years. So that being said, make friends with your HR and S1s, make friends with your N1s and your commanders, and see if you can get a kick to the right or do a home station AT. That would be of most benefit to you and your future civilian professional growth. Robin, any thoughts on that, or any?
No, I agree. I mean, we are also very USARA conscious. And once you get the full-time job, we actually pay you your Amazon salary, don't charge you any leave while you go to your 2 weeks. So it's very military friendly once you're full-time, and we won't stop you. We will not stop you if you're an intern from going. It won't help your experience. It's just fact. If you miss a few weeks of your internship from 12 down to 9, it won't help. And those dates are pretty set because teams set aside resources to support the interns. And so really challenging to operate outside that timeline. So if you can do anything to impact it just for that one summer, it would be great. But if you can't, we definitely will not, that won't impact your ability to be selected for the internship.
Well, we've reached the end of our hour. Does anyone else have a question that they'd like to ask? I would say just ask it very quickly. Otherwise, I'm going to let Mike and Jim wrap up. I want to thank Robin and Mike again for their time this evening. I think we've all learned a lot. I know this will be shared out with all 76 of our schools and then shared down through the students that they serve. Again, if you joined us late, please share your email address in the chat because we will be sharing all of the email addresses with Robin and Mike so you can be put into their databases and you will live there over the course of your college career. So I'll let Mike or Jim wrap up for us and just say thank you again to Mike and Robin.
Jim, go ahead.
Oh my God, I didn't know I had to close up. Well, thank you. Thanks again to Robin and Michael for taking the time today, and for all of you as students. I think it shows a great commitment to your own future that you're taking the time to spend an hour in an evening to sort of learn a little bit about how to navigate the next chapter in your life. And I think some of the cornerstones for us is the importance of those internships, the importance of networking, the importance of sort of transitioning your leadership skills as a student so that you can be really successful as you move forward in finding the perfect job for you. And so, and I know all of you are servant-oriented people, so continue to invest and make a difference, not only for yourself, but your classmates. So if you found this to be valuable, tell some friends of yours on the campus to pop this open and watch it for an hour, because I think there's a lot of valuable information that some of your classmates would benefit from. Encourage them to get on the next Zoom session. So thank you.
Yes, thank you both, Robin and Michael. I really appreciate it. We will get the copy of this with any of the slides that Robin and Michael share. I know they both shared their contact information in the chat as well. But you can also reach out directly to me, mike@nvlfoundation.org, and give me your email that way, and I will make sure it gets there. But we will get the recording out with the slides to you hopefully tomorrow. And again, please share with your other classmates and friends. Any last thoughts from anybody?
I'll just say one quick thing. I will probably be sending you, if I get your email, I will be sending you a request to register on a site so I can get your resume and whatnot, so I can get it in front of military recruiters. It's not an actual event. It says it's an event. It's just a way for me to get the information I need to have our recruiters consider you. So if you see that, it's not spam. It's just me. So.
And I guess the last thing I'll leave you is Robin and I are here for a reason. We're all from the same community, y'all. Okay. We may not all look the same way, but we're all from the Armed Forces community. So please know that this door, so once again, I'm going to poke fun at our O's here. This is an open door policy that will always stay open. Okay. So please, 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 please reach out if there's anything you need. If you have any doubts, if you have any curiosity whatsoever, whether it be for our organization or another one, we are here to help you. If you reach out to a veteran and they don't reply to you, or if they don't respond to you, do you really want to work for that organization? I'll leave it at that.
Good advice. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time and have a great evening.
Thanks all. Bye now.
Bye.
Copying emails also just in case. I trust the notes, but I don't. Francis, you had a question? Francis, can you hear me? Did you have a question? Oh, sorry, your mic's not working, I see. You want to type it in the chat? And that way we'll get it on copy too. If it's something I can't answer, then I'll get it to Robin and Michael. We could reach out to you. I did get your email there. Yes, it will. We're going to send their contact information, their slides, and the recording of this event will all come together. So you'll have their full contact information. And in the chat, I know right at the beginning, I'm scrolling down if you can see it. Michael put his right there, his LinkedIn. Michael Pet One LinkedIn. And I would recommend connecting with both of them on LinkedIn as well. But you will have their direct emails. Oh, and here's Robin's LinkedIn as well. Robin Baker 2 LinkedIn. So, but you will get their direct emails with that. Thank you. All right. Thank you all.